All right. Hello, listeners. Today we are going to talk about Against the Loveless World by Susan Abu Hawa. Massive trigger warning. There's a lot of violence mentioned. There's sexual assault. There's pregnancy loss. There's lots of death. It is a very heavy novel. So if any of that is going to trigger you in any capacity, please do not listen. Read at your own risk, but it is 100% worth the read, in my opinion. I genuinely enjoyed this book. It is a very heavy book. It is told from the point of view of Nahr, who is a Palestinian woman in a Israeli prison called the Cube. And basically, she is recounting her life as essentially a refugee, first in Kuwait, in Iraq, and then in Jordan, and then her adventures in Palestine, and then back and forth, and her life with her family and some of the decisions that she's made and her friends and all of that. I pretty sure gave this book 5 stars. Let me check. I really genuinely enjoyed it. I did. I gave it 5 stars.
I gave it 4.
It is very heavy to read, especially now with the heavy active genocide occurring in Palestine by Zionist forces. It's a really, really heavy, interesting book with I wasn't expecting the ending. So, spoiler alert for those who haven't read. I was not expecting Nahr to get a message from her husband. From why can't I remember his
Bilal.
name? Yes, I was not expecting that at all. I was hoping for it. Like, I was like reading, I'm like, can I get like a sliver of a happy ending where like she gets back to her husband, and like that was, but I liked that she got a message from her husband, but the ending was more about her friendship. Like, it's full circle back to her friendship with Umbarak, and Umbarak had taken care of her at the beginning, and now she was taking care of Umbarak while she was, essentially dying from cancer.
Yeah,
It
I mean,
was
it's a
a lot.
yeah, it's a lot. My tabs for this one were so I got devastating, I have history, I have icky /hatred, I got quotes, and then I have resistance. Yeah, it's a lot to digest. So it's a historical fiction, right? So the character that we're following the heart isn't real in terms of somebody out there having this exact same life and
Mhm.
going through this exact same thing. The author says that she pulled a lot of, you know, things from her own experience as well as speaking
Mhm.
to political prisoners and all of these things. I think at the core of it, a lot of this book is about perseverance. It's about family. We have Nahr kind of learns more about the attitudes of her mother and her grandmother. At the beginning she's very much like,
Mhm.
"Oh, they are super pushy in my business." And then as she starts to experience life as a refugee and having to leave and do all these things again, she goes, "Okay, they're very jaded because the world has not been open to them."
Correct.
She gets married pretty early on in the book to Muhammad, and he kind of sucks. He's kind to
No,
her. I mean, he
I don't know if I would say that he sucks. Like, I have issues with him, obviously, because
mhm.
of the way that he chose to approach the marriage.
Mhm.
It would have been really great had he been more honest, because obviously as the book goes on, we discover more about who he is and why he is the way that he is. And like I understand the purpose of putting him like in Nahar's path, because eventually it brings her to Bilal and the family in Palestine, but like I think he's just damaged and traumatized.
That's fair. I think he sucks, but specifically
That's fair.
for the moments when he comes back to see his mom, right? I obviously was really sympathetic towards him because he is a fugitive, right? He is consistently
Mm-hmm.
hiding, still manages to come back to see his mom. That was really great. He scored some points with me for that. However, he lost a lot of points with me when, like, his only words to Nahar is like, they can't know I'm here.
Right.
And that, I think, was what really sealed it, in the fact that I can see that he's traumatized. I can understand how trauma can shape a person. But I thought, like, at the very least,
He would have treated her better than that.
yeah, with like the fact that he left her, you know, he abandons her. She
Mm-hmm.
never goes out of her way to cause him any misery. She doesn't speak badly of him to anybody, you know. She is very
Mm-hmm.
much like, okay, he went and did his thing. When Bilal really starts to explain everything to her, she's like, I understand. I kind of saw it coming. Like, it's not, you know, she didn't ruin him, you know, even
Right.
just with the way that she talks. Like, she is a very opinionated woman. It kind of gets into her a lot of trouble throughout the book. But even knowing why her husband left and how her husband treated her, right? And how it ended
Mm-hmm.
up really shaping how she viewed herself. It like hurt me as somebody who had nothing to do with the situation and isn't there in the slightest. It really hurt me that like his only words to her after everything was basically like, don't rat me out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, she has given you nothing to make you think that she would, you know, especially
Right.
being here and being close to your mom.
Right. She's been taking care of your mother.
Yeah.
She's with your brother. Like, she has done a lot more for your family than you really have.
Yeah.
You at
And
least owe her the respect of knowing that she's not gonna rat you out.
yeah, especially just knowing how much that would hurt the mom and Bilal. That would have been a lot for
Mm-hmm.
them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't think when I say he sucks, it's definitely not about their marriage, because I know that that was a
Mm-hmm.
hard thing for both of them. It was his like final moments with her that really like solidified it for me. She lives a really rough life, right? So after she is left and people start finding out that she has been left, obviously a woman's worth in that society in that time was directly tied to whether they had a husband, whether they had a man with them,
Children. Yep.
and
All of that.
children, stuff like that. And so Umbarak ends up kind of inviting her into a world that she would not have found herself, and
Mm-hmm.
pulls her in a way that is not great, because she takes her to a party, ends up taking pictures of her at this
Mm-hmm.
party, knowing that she can ruin this reputation if she didn't basically
Mm-hmm.
follow along and come in. And Umbarak basically is like, I don't know what the term is for it. I'm
Blackmail?
thinking like, yeah.
Manipulation?
Yeah, I was thinking like the early 2000s. I'm not sure if this term is still good, but like I was going to say like pimp. Like, she connects women to men with the knowledge of like, these women can tell me what their limits are and I will make sure that these limits are abided by,
Mm-hmm.
but men are paying for the company of these women.
Mm-hmm.
And Nahar kind of makes a series of unfortunate decisions in leading to that, all of it really coming from a place of, I want my brother to be able to go to university. I want to have the freedom to make money for my family.
Yes.
And so is her lifestyle one that most people would consider like good? Probably not. She gets a lot of hate, a lot of stains on her reputation for it, but it's a freedom that she couldn't get anywhere else. She was able to make those decisions for herself. There's a really graphic scene towards the beginning of
Several
her.
graphic
Yes,
scenes.
there's one specifically that sticks out to me because it gave me the heebie-jeebies of them at the beach with the glass in her back. That
Yeah.
was really hard for me to read.
Mhm.
And so as time progresses, right, she starts making that more money. We have her younger brother Jihad goes to university, and then things start going very south because Kuwait ends up being, what's the word?
Invaded.
Invaded. Thank you. Ends up being invaded, so they end up having to leave, right? But Jihad actually ends up being taken in
Yes.
as like a, oh, you did this, you're one of them.
Mhm.
And he was like, I wasn't even here, dude. Like,
Yeah.
and it really shows how like
He gets
cruel.
taken in by Israeli forces, just
Yeah.
for clarification, under the assumption that he helped the Iraqi forces in Saddam Hussein's like invasion of Kuwait.
Yeah, so he ends up being taken in. He is tortured,
Mhm.
brutalized, comes back never quite the same. And any hope that he had of university and creating that life that he deserved because he was smart, worked hard for it, is, wiped away. Throughout all of this, Nahr has not gotten a divorce. She has not pushed for it. She,
She frankly isn't interested in it.
yeah, she's like, I don't really care if I was left. I don't really feel the need to go and get a divorce or whatever. And then Jihad and the mother end up going to Palestine.
Mhm.
And when they come back, Jihad has pointed out that he has basically started the divorce proceedings, but she needs to go and finish them, which is when she meets Bilal. So we learn a lot about him from stories and hearsay leading up to them meeting.
Mhm.
Basically, he was a resistance leader and was basically a hero in the eyes of their people. When we meet him, he surpassed my expectations of how much I
Yeah.
would like this character. He
Yeah.
is, I think, really well thought out. He is a perfect match for Nahr in the fact that he is not opposed to her opinions and the fact that she shares them openly. And I think that
He
that's really,
likes
yeah.
he likes that about her.
Yeah, he
He likes
likes the
that she's
fact that,
fiery
yeah.
and
And
opinionated.
that's really cool.
Mhm.
So we end up finding out through them that he's basically testing her for the first week. I don't know, however long the time frame was, but he was basically testing her, seeing whether she was, if she had any communications with people that were looking for him, basically, and can we trust her and stuff like that.
Mhm.
We find out that he and a group of his friends are quietly and very, I think, intelligently forming a resistance to Israeli forces that are popping in. We get to see a lot more of the background into like what the Israelis were doing in Palestine at that time. Because, mind you, so this book is based, I believe, in the early 2000s, 90s and 2000s, because at one point it says
Mhm.
like 2004. But it was published in 2020, so it was years
Yeah.
before what we now know is happening in Palestine. Not that it wasn't happening then, but before the global microscope was on it. Nahr kind of ends up realizing that she belongs in Palestine, right? She goes
She
back
loves
to,
it.
yeah, she loves it. She loves the nature. She loves the connection that she can have with Bilal. Inevitably, they end up falling in love and growing closer and stuff like that. He ends up being in prison twice in the span
Mhm.
of us knowing him.
Mhm.
She ends up kind of becoming instrumental to small moments of resistance. She helps with the water pipeline, which I thought was super smart, stuff like that. And throughout all of these things, the book kind of gets broken up into her giving the memories and her giving the like chronological order of things while also describing something else in the cube, so it keeps bringing us back
Yes.
to the present where she is dealing with her imprisonment and stuff like that. So then she and Bilal end up getting married and
Mhm.
they have a big plan to do a massive operation, right? And she ends up finding out one morning that she is pregnant
Mhm.
and he ends up
Sending her away.
Sending her away without her obviously knowing, because he knew she would not be okay with it. Sends her away, and then that's kind of when things all go south, because she ends up being found, and that's how she ends up in the cube. I thought so one thing that I think the author does that's really like ingenious is we got the moment in the cube right before this scene where the translator tells her that her grandmother had passed away. And so when we got to that scene in the past, and he says, and like Jihad is saying like, oh, grandmother has passed, you need to come home, I immediately was like, wait a second. Yeah.
Like, hold on.
She didn't pass here. And so I think that was, yeah. And so this book was heartbreaking. One of the moments that I remember stopping and being really heartbroken was when we find out that she had been in the cube for like 16 years.
Yeah.
And the fact that before the operation happens, Bilal and Ghassan basically says like, hey, if any of us are caught, we are not expecting you to like hold out forever. Whenever you decide that you are ready to give information, blame it on the two of us. Say that all of you guys had nothing to do with it. And this is kind of the plan that all of them follow. Ghassan ends up being killed.
Yes.
Later on, and that was also heartbreaking because, you know, we knew him as a person. He was one of the first ones from the book in like the inner workings kind of thing that we saw get murdered. Yeah. And the one before that also affected me was the shepherd.
Yes.
Yeah, that one was really painful. There were a lot of moments where I had to stop and take a moment. Book, I did a lot of the reading like out of my home because I was running errands. And that was really difficult because I had to like sit in public. Yeah. And
try not to have like physical sobbing reactions to a lot of what's going on.
And so that was incredibly difficult. We ended up meeting a lot of characters that I love. Like Jumana was really cool. I like that when she says the really like not great thing to Nahr at the beginning, I like that all of them were like, whoa there. Yeah. Why are we saying that? That's not what we don't care about that. And so I liked that they were able to reconcile and have those things.
I liked that they became really close friends.
Yeah. I liked the full circle of a lot of things. You know, we saw the character whose father like was paying Nahr to basically sleep with his son. So he was dealing with homosexuality and everything, and so the father had hired Nahr, and Nahr is like, okay, we're not sleeping together, but we'll have a conversation. And this man ends up being like crucial to her
getting to Palestine
and like meeting Bilal, and actually gets Bilal to test her. You know, I'm curious how, if Bilal would have gotten her involved, if he didn't already think that she was involved in some way. He thought she was involved against them.
Yes.
And then realized that she wasn't.
He was wrong. Yeah.
One thing I really like about Nahr as a character is the fact that she does all of this in the cube and everything, and she is the only one from the group that never points fingers.
Nope.
Everyone else, they get like a little snippet in her recollections, and she says, you know, all of them reached a point where they blamed it on Ghassan or Bilal. You know, they followed the plan and stuff like that. But she is like, on principle, I never said that Bilal did anything. I just, you know, endured and withstood and stuff like that. There was almost a beauty in the way that she described the cube. And I think when she got out, the honesty that she gave her family, I think was really beautiful. And like, she had just spent 16 years basically not talking to anybody. And now that she's home, everybody and their mothers wanted to come see her. And she was like, no.
Overstimulated. Yeah. To the extreme.
I think that was incredibly difficult. She's also so smart.
She's so smart and so clever.
I don't know if in her position, like all the way at the beginning when we get the first translator, she notices the code like on her shoes. And she was like, oh, I can trust this person because she's giving me information that the people don't know about and stuff like that. Her finding out that she will have a way to at least see Bilal again was bittersweet, because I was happy that she knew that she was going to get to see him again, but it was like, it like broke me a little bit to know that they would never be able to just like be together. Like every
Right.
meeting, everything that they did for the rest of their lives would have to be like clandestine, or
Right.
like they needed to be like out of the country.
Right.
Um which is, I'm sure, the reality of a lot of people in that situation, and the empath in me just really struggles
Yeah.
with that.
It was, I think, one of the parts of the book that I really had a hard time with were the descriptions of Palestine and like the hills and the flora and fauna and all of that. And just thinking in the context of now, all of the destruction that has happened in Gaza and Palestine as a whole, West Bank included. And like as I'm reading, I'm thinking how much of that is still even like how much
Hmm.
of that exists? Like the
Like
poppies, the poppy
the
fields.
yeah, like the orchards, the olive groves, like
Yeah.
all of these
Like
beautiful
so much has been
things.
destroyed already by Israelis and the Israeli forces that like
Yeah, and knowing like even the glimpses into things that were actually happening, of like the groves being under attack during the harvest, just because the Israelis knew that the olives were important to them.
yep.
Those things were really sad to read about. There were uplifting moments in it because we find out that there were like tourists and foreigners and stuff that, seeing what would
Hmm.
happen, like got in the way, kind of thing, trying to block, the rocks and stuff like that, until more dangerous things got involved. And I think that that was really nice because it showed, even if for a moment, even in this like historical fiction world, that there were still people willing to help, that it wasn't
Hmm.
as though, everybody saw what was going on and was like, this is okay. I like the people that were visiting and stuff were like, hey, this is kind of messed up. Like, if we can help in any way, we should. I think it was a heavy read. I think the only reason I did not give it 5 stars, I think, was probably just like how hurt I was. I think it was like a vibe thing of like, I'm distraught, and I
Hmm.
need to like reflect. It also felt weird in my logic, in my brain, to give 5 stars on like a book that was filled with so much icky,
Hmm.
important icky things that people
Hmm.
should know about, people should learn, people should be educated. But it was just so heavy that I was like, I need to take a star away just for my like mental health and my, and it's the privilege of being able to do that. It's a privilege of being able to be uncomfortable with the source material, but not be the source material. And that's a privilege that I'm aware of. And I think
Hmm.
everybody looking into the situation in Gaza and the situation with the Palestinians, it's the privilege that we have to be uncomfortable, but to not live in it. And I
Yeah.
think that's why when the videos pop up, when the news articles pop up, people should look, they should
Interact.
pay
Look.
attention, they should,
Speak
be
up.
uncomfortable, deal with the negative feelings, feel the bad things,
Hmm.
be afraid, be grossed out, be all of these terrible things, because you have the ability to, be uncomfortable, live in that moment, and then continue on with your objectively safer life.
Hmm.
And I think that that's incredibly important, which is why this book is like a highly recommend, because it's painful. It's so heavy, hits you in ways that you don't think it's going to,
Hmm.
but it's so important to read it. Down below in the info box, you will find links to resources, both Palestinian and also
Sudanese, Congolese.
mhm. we
There's a lot of
are
active genocides happening
we
right
are
now.
doing a mini series, which will probably not be the last mini series that we do of this kind, but we're kind of doing 4, no, 3 to start.
3.
And then we will be branching out probably past that to showcase things and stuff like that. Because I refuse to look back on this time and think that like I never spoke out, never did anything.
There's no sense in having a platform if you're not going to use it for the greater good.
Mm-hmm. And no matter how big or small your platform is, you should
It's
speak
still a
out.
platform. You should still use it.
This has been Against the Loveless World by Susan Abuhawa. It is a great read. The link in that will be in the box down below. The next book, part of this miniseries that we will be reading, is Salt Houses. I don't remember the author for that one. And then there is another book after that. But we hope that you guys have a good day. We hope that you remember the world is bigger than you. Remember that you are loved, you are important, and that we care about you.